This session, we will implement the Kubernetes cluster in IBM Cloud. So what I did, I create a free account on IBM Cloud. It will give you $200 of credit to spin up the resources up to 35 days. And more than $200 will be charged from your credit card. So I just created that account to show you how we can set up an IBM-based Kubernetes setup cluster, Kubernetes cluster. So it is IKS, IBM Kubernetes services. So I am right now logged in on my IBM account, and here are all the list of services provided by IBM Cloud. So if we go here, we can see the Kubernetes and overview. So here, there are some core concepts given about the IBM Kubernetes services. So if we click on the clusters, so right now we don't have any cluster. We can create our cluster. So when I will click on the create cluster, so it will ask me multiple question related to what type of cluster I want to set up, in which region I want to set up, and in which region, which zones I want to set up. And I can use the VPC as well as the classic infrastructure. It is recommended to use the VPC. It will give you an advanced level of network connectivity. So right now you can see here an error is coming that virtual private cloud. Choose an existing VPC or create a new one. So right now, there is no virtual private cloud is created. So VPC is just like networking. You can say in the cloud, there is a concept of region and zones. So in each zone, you will place a switch, network switch, and it will have its own IP range. And each zone will have a virtual switch with its own IP range, and both will be able to communicate with each other. Whatever region zones you want to select in that region, all the uh, all the zones in that region can communicate with each other. I will show you. So right now it is not available. We can click here to create, but if you click here, you can see the VPC infrastructure. So I'm going to the overview. So here is the virtual private cloud, and VPC layout. Right now, I don't have any VPC in any region, any zone. So I can create. So it is now asking me where I want to create. These are the geographical locations, North America, and these are the regions. In the Europe, these are the region, Asia Pacific, South America, wherever you want to create. For example, I want to select the Europe, North America, and I want to select Toronto. And here I have to give the name of this virtual private cloud. So I can say DevOps VU VPC. Here is the resource group. Resource group is basically a segregation of resources for different teams. So right now I have only one default resource group. We can create multiple resource group. This is a very fresh account. I have not created any resource group. So we can create resource group to different user, and then we can allocate those resource group so that every user uh, will have, every team will have their own resources in specific resource group. So once the resources will be set up and they want to communicate with each other, they must be in the same resource group. So I will use the default resource group. Tag is not mandatory. You can add for some reference. And here is a VPC default access control list. So in this VPC, we can have SSH access, a ping, and a prefix for each zone. In each zone will be created with a different IP range. We don't want to enable classic infrastructure access from this VPC. And these are the three regions where three zones, sorry, in the Toronto 1, Toronto 2, and Toronto 3. These are the three data centers in this region where we want to set up our VPC. So you can see here, each zone is allocated with a range of IP address slash 18 subnet mask is allocated. So this is the range of IP address for this zone. So now, public gateways detach. I will show you what is the purpose of the public gateway. So we can create this VPC. VPC is a free of cost service. You can see its bill is $0.0 per month. Create a virtual private. Okay, we are going to create VPC. So now it will take a minute to set up all the services, all the subnets in every zone I selected. So here the VPC is created. Three subnets are created. And here are the locations. So now our VPC is ready. Now we can go back to our Kubernetes cluster. We can now set up our new cluster. So here I am selecting VPC. Here you can see it automatically selected the VPC we created. So far we have only one VPC. We could have multiple VPCs too, but right now we have only one. And we want to select which zones to set up our cluster. For example, I don't want to set up my cluster in Toronto 3. So I will disable this. So my cluster worker nodes will only be in Toronto 1 and Toronto 2. So right now I am enabling this Toronto 3 2. So in all these three zones, our worker nodes will be available. Here, this is the Kubernetes version. Latest version provided by IBM Cloud is 1.30.3. And we can also go ahead with the older version, but it is recommended to use the latest one. Worker pool, we have to give the name of the worker pool where our workers will be available. So I am creating DevOps VU workers. And here you can see worker node per zone. It is recommended to have at least 3 worker node in each zone. It means we will have 9. So I am going to reduce its quantity. One worker node in each zone. We will have three worker nodes. And this is the compute resource. So far, we will set up just a very basic application. So I'm not going to use this much amount of resources. So I will reduce two CPU and 8 GB memory. That is good enough. And it will cost me in pay as you go $0.14 per hour. So we have three machines, so we can multiply this figure with three. And you can see here, this is based on Ubuntu 20. So it is changed. So now you can see on your right side, there is a billing calculation going on. It is showing you what is so far, what have you selected, how much it will cost you per month. If you spin up these whole resources uh, for whole month, so then it will cost you at the end of the month this amount, $1. Worker pool encryption. I don't want to enable worker pool encryption. It is you can enable this for the security reason. The data on rest will be encrypted. So right now I'm disabling this. Master service endpoint, the master node, the control plane where our API will be residing. What will be the way of communication? With both private and public endpoint. Communication to the master is accessible from the internet to your private and public network. So it's mean we can use the kubeconfig generated file via internet to communicate with our cluster. Otherwise, if we select the private endpoint only, then we must have to set up some machine in this same VPC, either Windows or Linux, and then we can use that machine to communicate with our API server. So right now I will use public and private endpoint. Our API will be exposed to uh, publicly reachable. So outbound traffic protection, protect network traffic by enabling only the connectivity necessary for the cluster to operate and preventing access to the public internet. Uh, it is a type of security, but I am going to disable this. Disabling the outbound traffic profile will allow you to cluster access an external source, including the public internet. I mean, we can connect any external repository. So far, I am not using any internal container registry. So I will pull down the image from Docker Hub. So that's why I am going to disable this. So, but in production environment, it is recommended to enable this because in production environment, you will use the IBM local repository, image repository. In this video, we are not going to cover how IBM uh, container registry will work, but uh, in later on, I will do a specific video for this purpose. The cluster encryption we can enable. We learn in the Kubernetes that by default, the secret we are creating are only base 64 encoded. So for the advanced level of security, we must have to use an external encryption mechanism for our secrets. So IBM is providing a KMS, key management service, to encrypt our secrets. And we need to set up KMS service. It will cost you. But right now I am going to disable this. It will automatically attach your cluster with this KMS and all your secrets will be saved in this will be encrypted under KMS. Nobody can see this, that decrypted. Ingress secret management. Register an IBM Cloud Secret Manager instance of cluster to manage ingress, subdomain, certificate, and secret. This is about the TLS certificates we want to save in our Kubernetes cluster. I showed you in the videos where I set up the ingress controller and where I use the TLS certificates of the domains that are offloaded by ingress controller. So we don't want to enable this service too, because that you need to enable the instance to maintain the secret for TLS certificates. VPC security group uh, provide up to 4. I mean, we don't want to create any security group uh, to prevent the traffic enter in the VPC. By default, it is providing the security group. The default security group will not be applied. So provide up to 4 custom security group to apply all worker nodes. So uh, I am going to disable this because I don't want to use any security group. This is the name of my cluster, and I can change to something like DevOps, VU, should be less than IKS. DevOps VU IKS, and then it is representing what flavor you have selected for your worker node and what region and zone you have selected. Resource group, again, the default, we have only one resource group. And the activity tracker, it will launch the additional pod in your cluster. We can enable it later on. I don't want to enable this. Logging, I can enable, it will launch the additional pod in your cluster to show you the logs on the dashboard, what is going on in the cluster. I don't want to enable this. We can enable the Kubernetes-based monitoring on our cluster. It will again launch the additional pods. So I don't want to enable this. So right now you can see we have provided all the things, and our total bill after the 1 month will be $301 with these resources. But later on we will add more resources. This bill will be. This is for the only for the Kubernetes cluster, but the other resources we will allocate with the cluster will be charged separately. Let me create this cluster. It will take a while to set up the cluster. So meanwhile, I will show you how we are going to communicate with our cluster. So this is a cloud managed cluster. So ingress controller will be deployed by the IBM. And I will show you after the deployment of this cluster. And what else we can see? We can see these are all the uh, third-party resources provided by IKS, IBM. You can install it anytime. Uh, so cluster autoscaler, we can enable these are all resources we can set up. Right now, uh, it will take a while to set up. So I will show you how we are going to communicate with our IBM. So I will use IBM Cloud CLI utility. If we go to IBM Cloud CLI, So this utility we will use to interact with our IBM Cloud using our credentials to communicate with our whole cloud resources. So here, this document, this URL is showing us all the method, how we can install the IBM Cloud utility. So for Mac, you can use this command. For Linux, we can use this command. For Windows, this is the way. Okay. So what I have done, I am going to use a Ubuntu-based machine. Its IP is 192.168.18.101. I'm going to do an SSH to this machine. Okay. So uh, this is my machine, and let me change the host name. IBM client. I mean, I want to manage my IBM cluster by using this machine. Let me just log out and log in again. So, okay. Let me check the internet is working on this machine. Yes, it is. So what I will do, actually, I am convenient with the Linux. That's why I am using, but you can use the Windows too. So here I will use this command that will automatically pull down and install this IBM client utility. So here we can see what is the progress. It is still in pending state. It will take some time. Okay, so this has been downloaded, and now IBM Cloud is a new command available in my machine to communicate with my uh, cloud. So here I made some notes, and these are uploaded in this video in the Git repo. So here, some useful link I mentioned. Uh, Logging into IBM Cloud account. Include the SSO option to if using the federated ID. Uh, it is a better idea to use this command to communicate with your to make the authentication by command line to your IBM Cloud. So this command I am going to use, and this is a URL you can use to install the IBM Cloud CLI. So after the installation of IBM Cloud utility, what I am going to do, I'm just going to run this command, and it is uh, asking me to open this link from where my IBM Cloud account is already logged in. And it will use that session, provide me a token, one-time code that will make the authentication connectivity with my IBM Cloud. Let me go to the same session where I am logged in. I just need to copy paste this link. I need to log in. So here is the code. Just have to provide here. It is authenticating. It responded back. Okay. It's mean now we are connected, targeted account selected. This is my account ID. Okay. No response from the target group. Okay. So this, what is this reason? We need to run these commands to communicate with our cluster. So let me, first of all, we need to install these plugins too, but it is unable to fetch the resource group. Since we are logged in our IBM account, so it is not able to fetch the resource group ID. Okay, no problem. We can proceed without, I think we can proceed without this resource group. So let me run some command to validate. We also need to install these two plugin, container service and container registry, if we want to communicate with our container registry, but so far we don't need this. And here is the command IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service Cluster LS. Uh, Check your installed plugin, okay. I must have to install these plugin. I don't think so. These are the exact plugins we need. Let me check either this is working. Yes, it is. So now you can see after installing those plugins, now I query from IBM Cloud to my cluster, to my cluster. So show me how many Kubernetes cluster are running. So it is showing me in this Toronto location, 3 worker nodes 10 minutes ago, successfully deployed. This is the ID of my cluster, and this is the name. Okay. So similarly, if I want to now communicate with my cluster, so far I don't have the kubeconfig file that will be used to communicate with my cluster. So, and if I don't have kubectl even, so I also need to install the kubectl as well as this the kubeconfig. So this command will help me to, it will give me an error because this ID I provided wrong. So actually the ID of my cluster is this one. So now it is IBM Cloud Utility is trying to communicate with this cluster. You can see the ID of this cluster. It is still pending. I think I just need to refresh. And here you can see the cluster ID. It is same what I fetch from. So now most of the things are done. Finalizing the worker nodes. It will be in the background. So here you can see what this command did. This command. This command communicate with our token to our cloud with this cluster and pull down the kube config file. Added context of this one to current kube config file. The kube config file is generated. The configuration of this cluster was downloaded. So where it is downloaded? So here is a directory, a hidden directory .cube. And in this directory, this is the config file. So I do a cat. So this is the complete config file. And here is a certificate authority also downloaded under this location, under the .blue mix. But this is the complete file, and this is the URL for our API server. If I just do to validate curl-k file, just want to see either I am able to communicate with my cluster. Yes, you can see this is a generic response from the API. So this is a node port that is exposed by IBM Cloud, and this is some load balancer or some public IP generated by IBM Cloud to communicate with our API server. So it's mean we pull down our kubeconfig file and we are able to communicate from internet to our cluster. Now, what is the limitation? We don't have kubectl command. So we just need to install the kubectl, and I believe we cannot install kubectl directly. Uh, Let me just quickly query to kubectl install Ubuntu. So this is a very simplest command given on Kubernetes documentation. Uh, this is for the ARM processor. This is for the Intel-based processor, x86 64-bit processor. And this command we will use to install this. Actually, this is a binary. So it will pull down this kubectl utility at this location. Okay. This utility has been downloaded. What we need to do, chmod, first of all, make it executable. Actually, this is a binary. And we need to just move this kubectl to some executable location. So USR under the bin, I am going to migrate this. Now kubectl is a command, a part of command of our system. The size is, you can see, size of this utility is 50 megabyte. This is a complete binary. So kubectl get nodes is showing me that I have 3 nodes. It's mean I am able to make the end-to-end communication with my Kubernetes cluster. So here, what I did, may you have a question that we have not exposed the kube config environment variable, but how we are communicating. So kube config environment variable is one way to make the communication with the config file. If you have in your home directory the kube directory, and in that directory you just put the kube config file with the name of config. So this will also be treated as a default location for the kubectl. So whenever kubectl will run, it will look for the environment variable. If that is not found, it will also look this path. So from this path, it is getting the config file and it is working fine. So you can see kubectl get pods -a. So IKS is using Calico to as a CNI, and in the Calico system namespace. And these are this is core DNS running. Three instances are running, and this is the proxy, kube proxy. Uh, these are some drivers to make the communication with the block storage. These pods are running. This is the ingress controller by default. Health check in ingress controller is running uh, to uh, to show the health of the ingress controller. Okay. Then the metric server is built in. The dashboard of the Kubernetes is built in. Okay. And there are some other utilities are also deployed by IBM Cloud. So if I run kubectl top pod, top nodes, so you can see by default metric server is up and running. But if you remember, when we installed the Kubernetes bare metal, we did this. We installed the ingress controller, we installed the in metric server. We did everything from scratch. But when you are going on cloud provider based IB Kubernetes service, then they will give you most of the things pre-installed. And so you can see how many load here, top pod, all namespaces. Okay. And here, kubectl get uh, namespaces. So these are all the default namespaces created by IKS. So Calico contain all the CNI. These are some certificates. Okay. So what's next? So what we did so far, we successfully spin up our Kubernetes cluster, and we understand how IBM Cloud client utility is working, how to authenticate, how to communicate. And with this command, you can see if we run kubectl config view, so it is showing me all the config file and a kubectl config uh, get contexts. So this is the context set up in my kube config file. Uh, Current context. We have only one context, so current context is set up. So we can run this command to view which context is set up right now. So if you have multiple Kubernetes clusters set up on your IBM cloud, and when you will run these commands to pull down the configs, for example, you have multiple clusters. So you will run this command multiple times with different IDs. So will pull down, each command will pull down the relevant certificate and configuration required uh, for that cluster in the same config file. And we did this topic in detail, that how to manage multiple certificates and multiple clusters, uh, multiple users certificate and multiple cluster user certificates into in a single kube config file. So in this session, we just did this and we will not do anything else. I will just show you kubectl get SC storage classes. So these are all the default storage classes provided by IBM. So in the next session, I will show you how we can use these storage classes to set up different block storages of different uh, read writing speed, and how we can set up the cloud object based storage class that is not by default available. So that is a topic for our next session. So far we did everything about the setting up of Kubernetes cluster in our cloud. So let me just take a look from this dashboard. You can see this is healthy. This 2 out of 2 is healthy. Add-ons, master status is normal. We don't know when we set up the Kubernetes cluster in any cloud. We only know about the worker nodes. So when I ran this command, kubectl get nodes, I only know about my worker node. I don't know about my master node. So master node is managed by the responsibility is the cloud provider. That's why they are taking money and the billing for this whole cluster management. So uh, the there is an ingress status warning. This warning reason is the recommendation when I set up the cluster. The recommendation came from IBM Cloud to set up 3 worker node in each zone. But what I did only one. So at least 2 worker nodes are recommended from IBM in each zone to make your ingress controller healthy. So here, if I show you maybe get pod -a, so you can see some pods are in pending state. So they are trying to spin up in the same region, same zone on the second worker node, but that is not available. It is also trying. So these 3 are in pending. They are looking the second worker node in the same zone, but that is not available. But here, if I show you -provide, I just do a filter on yeah, you can see ALB1, ALB2, elastic load balancer. So each zone created a load balancer that will be used to get the traffic inside the cluster. So I will show you all these things in detail. And let me just zoom out. And here you can see this pending. It is looking for some worker node that is not available. So all our worker nodes get nodes -provide. So you can see our worker nodes are named with the IP, whatever the IP are assigned. And so it is scheduled here, it is scheduled here, it is scheduled here. Each worker node has a one ingress controller. So it is not uh, it is not making the recommended, it is not making the recommended practice uh, by the IBM cloud. So that's why we are looking here warning, but still our ingress controller will run. Okay, so our cluster is healthy. So in this video, we just set up the cluster. In the next videos, I will show you how we can deploy the application and take the leverage of the storage classes and ingress controller, everything we will do.